Most doctors tell you to avoid cheese if you have type 2 diabetes. But what if that advice is outdated? A landmark study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition followed over 16,000 people and found that regular cheese consumption was actually linked to a lower risk of developing type 2 diabetes. Not higher, lower. Researchers are discovering that certain cheeses contain specific proteins, fats, and compounds that directly improve how your body handles blood sugar. But not all cheese works the same way. Some types actively help your cells respond to insulin, while others do almost nothing. Today, I am walking you through the 4 best cheeses for blood sugar control, ranked from helpful to absolutely essential, and the number 1 cheese on this list. Scientists only recently figured out exactly why it works so powerfully at the cellular level, and the mechanism sounds like something straight out of a pharmacy. Number 4, cottage cheese. This one surprises a lot of people because it does not look or taste like what most folks picture when they hear cheese. Cottage cheese is fresh, soft, and mild, but do not let that fool you. It is quietly one of the most blood sugar-friendly foods you can eat, especially as a senior. The key is casein protein, which is a slow-digesting protein that cottage cheese is packed with. When you eat it, your body breaks it down gradually over several hours. This means glucose, your blood sugar, enters your bloodstream at a steady, controlled pace instead of spiking all at once. Think of it like a slow-release capsule rather than a sugar bomb. A study published in the Journal of Nutrition in 2015 found that adding a high-protein dairy food like cottage cheese to a meal reduced post-meal blood glucose levels significantly compared to a carbohydrate-matched control. The glucose response dropped by up to 38% in participants who already had elevated blood sugar. Cottage cheese is also rich in leucine, which is a branched-chain amino acid. Leucine has been shown to stimulate the pancreas to release insulin in a glucose-dependent way, meaning it helps your insulin response work more efficiently without overstimulating it. That matters a lot for people with type 2 diabetes who often have sluggish or poorly timed insulin release. 1 cup of low-fat cottage cheese gives you around 25 grams of protein, only about 6 grams of carbohydrates, and roughly 180 calories. Its glycemic index sits around 10 to 15, which means it barely moves your blood sugar on its own. The best strategy is to eat it before or at the start of a higher carbohydrate meal. A study in diabetes care showed that eating protein and fat before carbohydrates in the same meal blunted the post-meal glucose spike by as much as 29%. Starting your meal with a small bowl of cottage cheese before rice or bread can actively protect your blood sugar. You can also pair it with berries for breakfast, mix it into scrambled eggs, or use it as a topping on whole grain toast. If eating it as a snack, add a handful of walnuts. The fat slows digestion further and extends blood sugar protection. One important note, always choose low-sodium cottage cheese. Some brands contain over 400 milligrams of sodium per serving, and high sodium raises blood pressure, which is already a concern for most people managing diabetes. Also worth knowing, a randomized crossover trial published in Appetite in 2016 found that people who ate a cottage cheese breakfast reported feeling fuller for longer and consumed significantly fewer calories at their next meal compared to those who ate a bagel breakfast with the same number of calories. For seniors managing weight alongside blood sugar, that satiety effect is genuinely valuable. Feeling full longer means fewer cravings and less snacking on high-carb foods that drive glucose spikes throughout the day. Now let's move to a cheese with an even stronger effect on insulin sensitivity. If this is already surprising you, hit subscribe because we break down science like this every week. Number 3, feta cheese. Feta is one of the oldest cheeses in the world, and it turns out the Greeks may have been onto something health-wise without even knowing it. Made traditionally from sheep's milk or a blend of sheep's and goat's milk, feta has a very different nutritional profile from most cow's milk cheeses. The most important feature for blood sugar control is its fat composition. Feta is rich in short-chain and medium-chain fatty acids, particularly butyric acid and caproic acid. These are not the same as the long-chain saturated fats people typically worry about. Short and medium-chain fatty acids go directly to the liver for energy rather than circulating in your bloodstream. More importantly, they improve insulin sensitivity at the cellular level. A study published in Lipids in Health and Disease found that diets enriched with short-chain and medium-chain fatty acids improved insulin sensitivity markers significantly compared to diets high in long-chain saturated fat, with participants showing improved fasting insulin levels over a 12-week period. Feta is also a notable source of conjugated linoleic acid, CLA, a naturally occurring fatty acid found primarily in dairy from grass-fed animals. A meta-analysis published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition reviewed 18 controlled trials and found that CLA significantly reduced body fat mass, with an average loss of about 0.05 kilograms of fat per week. Why does this matter for diabetes? Because excess abdominal fat is one of the primary drivers of insulin resistance. Less visceral fat means better insulin sensitivity, which means better blood sugar control. Feta is also lower in lactose than most soft cheeses because of its fermentation and brining process, a practical benefit since lactose intolerance becomes more common with age. The fermentation means feta also contains beneficial bacteria that support gut health, and a 2019 study in Cell Host and Microbe found that specific gut bacteria strains directly influenced how efficiently participants metabolize glucose after meals. 1 ounce of feta gives you about 4 grams of protein, 6 grams of fat, and only around 1 gram of carbohydrates. Its strong flavor means you naturally use less, which makes it easy to keep portions controlled. Crumble it over a Greek salad with olive oil, cucumbers, olives, and red onion. The combination of feta's protein and fat with the fiber from vegetables creates one of the best blood sugar stabilizing meals you can make quickly. You can also add it to omelets or spread it onto whole grain crackers with avocado. Always look for sheep's milk or authentic Greek feta, which tend to have higher CLA content than versions made entirely from cow's milk. The next cheese contains something that directly targets your liver's role in blood sugar regulation. Number 2. Parmesan, Parmigiano Reggiano. Parmesan is aged hard cheese, and aging is exactly what makes it so powerful. When cheese is aged for 12, 18, or even 24 months, as authentic Parmigiano Reggiano is, the proteins break down into bioactive peptides. These are small protein fragments that have direct biological effects in your body beyond just nutrition. One class of these peptides found in aged hard cheeses are called ACE inhibitory peptides, and research published in the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry found that these same compounds also inhibit an enzyme called DPP4, dipeptidyl peptidase 4. You may recognize that name because DPP4 inhibitors are an actual class of prescription diabetes medications. Drugs like sitagliptin, Januvia, and saxagliptin, Onglyza, work by blocking this exact enzyme. When DPP4 is inhibited, your body preserves a hormone called GLP-1 longer. GLP-1 stimulates insulin release after meals and suppresses glucagon, the hormone that raises blood sugar. Parmesan contains naturally occurring compounds that partially mimic the mechanism of diabetes drugs. A study published in Food Chemistry in 2017 specifically identified several peptides in Parmigiano Reggiano with strong DPP4 inhibitory activity and noted that regular consumption could have meaningful effects on post-meal blood glucose management. Parmesan is also extraordinarily rich in calcium. Research published in Diabetes Care showed that inadequate calcium intake is associated with a higher risk of insulin resistance. Seniors are already at elevated risk of deficiency due to reduced absorption with age. 1 ounce of Parmesan delivers about 336 milligrams of calcium, roughly a third of the daily recommended intake. It also has almost zero lactose because the aging process causes bacteria to convert it almost entirely, so even people with significant dairy sensitivity can usually tolerate it fine. Per ounce, Parmesan provides about 11 grams of protein, 7 grams of fat, and less than 1 gram of carbohydrates. The protein density is exceptional, higher than almost any other commonly eaten cheese. Use it as a flavor enhancer to get the most benefit. Grate it over roasted broccoli, cauliflower, or zucchini and bake until golden. Add it to egg dishes. Stir a tablespoon into bean-based soup or mix it into cauliflower rice. Always buy a block and grate it fresh. Pre-grated Parmesan in shaker cans often contain cellulose powder fillers and lower-quality cheese blends with fewer bioactive peptides. The authentic Parmigiano Reggiano will have the name stamped directly on the rind. And now the cheese that research has identified as genuinely exceptional for type 2 diabetes, with a mechanism unlike anything else on this list. Number 1. Aged Gouda. Here it is. The number 1 cheese for blood sugar control, and it earned that spot because of a nutrient it contains in amounts you simply cannot easily get anywhere else in your diet. That nutrient is vitamin K2, specifically the form called NK7, and the connection between K2 and diabetes is one of the most exciting areas of current nutritional research. Aged Gouda, particularly when aged 18 months or longer, is one of the richest dietary sources of vitamin K2 and K7 on Earth. A 100-gram serving can contain up to 75 micrograms of vitamin K2 as NK7. Most people in Western countries get virtually none in their daily diet, and deficiency is shockingly common. A large prospective study published in Diabetes Care in 2010, part of the Epichinel cohort following over 38,000 Dutch adults, found that every 10 microgram increase in daily vitamin K2 intake was associated with a 7% reduction in the risk of developing type 2 diabetes. That is a consistent, dose-dependent relationship observed across tens of thousands of people over years of follow-up. The mechanism centers on a protein called osteocalcin. Your bones produce osteocalcin, but it requires vitamin K2 to become activated. Without K2, osteocalcin remains inactive and cannot do its job. Once activated, osteocalcin functions as a hormone. It travels through the bloodstream and acts on the pancreas to increase insulin secretion. It also acts on muscle and fat cells to improve their sensitivity to insulin. A landmark study published in Nature by Dr. Gerard Carcinti's lab at Columbia University demonstrated that osteocalcin-deficient mice developed severe glucose intolerance. And when osteocalcin was restored, blood sugar regulation normalized. Human studies confirmed that low osteocalcin levels are directly associated with higher fasting blood glucose, lower insulin sensitivity, and greater risk of type 2 diabetes. A second mechanism involves K2's role in activating matrix DLA protein, or NGP. NGP prevents calcium from depositing inside blood vessel walls. People with diabetes have much higher rates of arterial calcification, which stiffens arteries and dramatically raises cardiovascular risk. K2 activates NGP and keeps calcium directed to bones where it belongs. A study in the Journal of Nutrition found that high dietary K2 intake was associated with significantly reduced arterial stiffness, a key cardiovascular risk factor heavily elevated in people with type 2 diabetes. A 2013 randomized controlled trial published in Diabetes and Metabolism found that vitamin K2 supplementation over 4 weeks significantly improved insulin sensitivity in older men. The effect was clinically meaningful, not just statistically significant. Aged Gouda also delivers CLA, bioactive peptides from aging, substantial protein at about 7 to 8 grams per ounce, and very low carbohydrates. Because of the long aging, lactose is minimal, making it well tolerated by most seniors. Here is how to eat it for maximum benefit. Vitamin K2 is fat-soluble, meaning your body absorbs it best alongside dietary fat. The fat in Gouda helps, but pairing it with walnuts, olives, or avocado boosts absorption even further. A practical daily target is about 1 to 1.5 ounces. Eat it as a mid-afternoon snack with a handful of raw nuts to prevent the blood sugar dip that leads to poor food choices later in the day. You can also melt it over roasted vegetables or add thin slices to warm soup just before serving. Some people enjoy it simply on its own with a few olives and a small portion of whole grain crackers. That combination covers fat, fiber, and protein in one simple snack, which is exactly what your blood sugar needs between meals. When buying, look specifically for Gouda aged 18 months or longer, labeled aged, old, or extra aged. The younger soft Gouda in the red wax rind has significantly less K2 because the bacteria that produce MK7 need extended time to work. Proper aged Gouda will be deep golden yellow, firm, and have small crystalline crunchy spots throughout. Those crystals are amino acid deposits from the aging process and a clear sign you have the right product. If you want to track whether you are actually getting enough K2, ask your doctor about checking your uncarboxylated osteocalcin levels. High uncarboxylated osteocalcin is a direct marker of functional K2 deficiency. It is not a standard test, but many labs can run it. One important caution: if you are taking warfarin or any vitamin K antagonist blood thinner, speak with your doctor before significantly increasing K2 intake, as your physician needs to know about dietary changes while you are on anticoagulant therapy. 4 cheeses, 4 distinct mechanisms, all backed by real science. Cottage cheese blunts post-meal spikes with slow-digesting protein. Feta improves insulin sensitivity through its unique fatty acid profile and gut health support. Parmesan delivers natural DPP-4 inhibiting peptides that mimic part of how diabetes medications work. And aged Gouda leads the list with vitamin K2, the most well-researched nutrient for insulin function and glucose metabolism that most people are simply not getting. These are real foods at any grocery store. No exotic supplements, no complicated protocols. Just smarter choices about what goes on your plate. The science here is real, the studies are large, and the results are consistent. Talk to your doctor before making major dietary changes, especially if you are already on medication, but bring these studies with you because this is absolutely science worth discussing. Small, consistent dietary changes, made week after week, are often what move the needle most for long-term blood sugar control. Start with one of these cheeses and build from there. Your blood sugar does not need a dramatic overnight overhaul. It needs consistent, well-informed choices made every single day. These 4 cheeses are a great place to start that journey. Now, we want to hear from you. Which of these 4 cheeses are you already eating, and which one surprised you the most? Share with us your experiences and opinions in the comments below. We love to hear them. Thanks for watching.